Hi guys. Welcome to Pixelated Woman, Lousy Internet at Environmental Coffee House. And I'm glad you're here today because there's a lot to talk about. And you'll just have to put up with my crappy internet because there's really nothing I can do about it other than nothing. So welcome. I'm glad that you're here. I want to start out today because it's been one heck of a week. So this is the week that was. I'll tell you, between what's happened in Florida and California and the fires and the heat and the scientists and what they're talking about and all the people that comment on all of the different venues and the newspaper articles, it is just unbelievable. It really is. So I'm going to say hi to everybody. I don't know if you're sharing, you have to share from the page, not the group, but thank you very much because I'm in Facebook jail and I will be trying a new venue. Also, it's called Just Inform, and we'll let you know about how that's going to go. Okay. So I'm going to start with this one first, which is the HR 6147. And that was the anti-environmental spending bill. And this is from the League of Conservation Voters. We had it on our page. And while everyone is being distracted by all the bullshit, the Russia bullshit, the investigation, the Manafort trial, all this other stuff, they're stealing our land, the government. And really, I hate to do it like this, but the Republicans are a bunch of skeebags because they all voted for this. Now, no was the environmental stand, okay? It was brought up by Representative Ken Calvert, he was a Republican, sponsored HR 6147. Department of Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act of 2019, which deeply cuts into the EPA as well as includes numerous anti-environmental policy riders. This bill contains cuts to essential conservation efforts carried out by the Department of Interior, including $65 million cut to the Land and Water Conservation Fund, our nation's biggest park program. The poison pill riders include provisions repealing the Clean Water Rule that protects the drinking water of 1 in 3 people in this country, as well as direct attacks on protections for wildlife such as the greater sage grouse. Overall, this appropriations bill weakens efforts to protect our air, water, lands, wildlife, and climate. And on July 19th, the House passed the bill by a vote of 217 to 199. Now, I on this page, which I don't actually have up to show you, but on this page, they showed what your representatives voted. And of course, where I live, Tom Reed, who we really desperately want to get rid of, he voted for it, which means gut, because he votes on the Republican line. You know, he votes with the Republicans every time. And I didn't have a lot of time to get this ready, so I'm just fixing this a little bit. Okay, so, and a lot of the Republicans did. It was almost like party line, 215 to 198 and 13 not voting. So basically, this whole thing, this HR 6147, I'm going to look up really quick. HR 6147 is robbing Americans. It is robbing us. HR 6147, robbing us. I think that's it. And they, I don't get it. You know, we have enough money in this country, the richest country in the world. We have enough money to protect our environment, but these people want to sell out. They're going to sell out. And it's basically selling out to the fossil fuel industry. So at this point, the House Appropriations, the committee chairs determine whether the bill will move past the committee stage. They voted on the bill passed on August 1st. Okay. And it had quite a bit in it, but actually, interior environment, financial services and general government, agriculture, rural development, food and drug administration, transportation, housing and urban development appropriations act 2019. But the part I'm concerned with is gutting wildlife. And I'm so sorry that my internet connection is bad. So that's the way it started out, politically, for me, who follows all of this stuff. And I follow the votes because it is so insane what is happening and what is the result. I mean, there's the camp of people that say it doesn't matter. We're going to be screwed no matter what we do, no matter who votes for what. But we have an election coming up. This is a real opportunity, I hope, to get rid of some of these people, to get rid of some of these climate denying in the fossil fuel pocket people. That's all I can tell. That's what I have to tell you. It really, really makes me upset. But then we're going to go on. I want to move on a little bit because we all know what's been going on out in California. And I see that there's a conversation in the gallery that is talking about what's happening in California. I'm going to put up your comments because Marcia said right now that the Mendocino complex fire now is bigger than the Redding fire. 9,000 structures threatened. It's insane. And the dryness is a big deal, and we do have a friend out there, Karen Reese, and she did tell me that she's okay. A friend that follows us and that is a wonderful person. And Angie says we cannot be apathetic. It is just too important, which means getting rid of, at least in the United States. I can't tell you in Canada, you just voted in Quebec. I mean, not Quebec. In Ontario, they voted in Ford, a guy who's another Trump. And it's like, what's going on is scary. However, there is a bit of a light. There is a bit of light. We'll talk about Mexico in a minute. There's also a forest fire in Oregon. There's the fire season. They were talking about that it was like tornadic activity driven by the kind of winds there were. I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories that I can't talk about because that's not what I read on science, that these fires started from somewhere else, other than they did arrest a guy for starting a bunch of them. Just a guy, just some guy doing bad things, starting fires because he's basically a degenerate. I'm going to move to Florida a little bit. Let's back and forth it. We're going to back and forth it because there's a lot to go on. So on the page, we had an article that was about Florida, and it was about Captiva and the city of Sanibel. They continued the collection and removal of dead sea life that began on July 28th. First break of day reports indicated dead sea life deposits today, and that was like days ago, are greater in volume than on August 1st, according to officials. Today's hardest hit area reported thus far is between Donak Street to Lighthouse Beach on the Gulf side. On August 1st, the city removed a total of 22 large carcasses from the island's shores, 20 Goliath grouper and 2 tarpon, and thousands of smaller dead sea life. I think all of us that have been on the internet have seen videos from people, just people that live down there have been showing videos and showing what it's like. And I have to tell you, one of our guys, Matt, that follows us, he has a page, the GAO Science page. Matt did a cleanup, and it was really disturbing to hear what he had to do down there. And this is because of the red tide. They said the city down there substantially increased the contractual labor. This is only Sanibel, and equipment allocated to the beach cleanup task. The city is has 4 float boats in the canals cleaning dead sea life. Additionally, extra contract labor is on shore of the canals, also removing dead sea life. The city has begun in canals with the greatest impact. One of the most challenging tasks this morning, they had said, was the removal of 9 additional dead Goliath groupers from the bayside in areas difficult to access. So that city had 3 basic operations: beach cleanup, canal cleanup, and waterside removal, rapid response team. We have to go a lot more into this about why this is happening. We talk about this, and all of the discussions have been around the sugar industry, and how the sugar industry and their runoff is partially to blame. How in Florida, how the pesticide industry is to blame, because everybody's got to have these lovely lawns. They have to have these manicured lawns and use all that stuff. And Kim says Aaron Brockovich is down there raising hell. Yeah, I know. I read. I'm glad. Good. Because we got to get rid of this guy, this governor down there. And Judy, who's on our team, and I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to pull it up because Judy on our chat, she has she put up the list of it's called Save Our State. And for Governor Gwen Graham, U.S. Senate Bill Nelson, U.S. Representative Stephanie Murphy, Attorney General Sean Shaw, and Congressional District 9 Darren Soto, Commissioner of Agriculture, which is a very important job in Florida, Nicole Nikki Freed, and the CFO Jeremy Ring. So the primary in Florida is August 28th. Okay, she lives in Florida, so she has a vested interest, because it is just insane what's happening down there. I mean, these are reforms that have to happen all over our country, in the United States, all over the world. And there is one country that is actually doing something. And I'm going to find this article about Mexico. I'm going to take this one down. I don't have this up as a picture of the Mexican president, but we'll go through that. And it's quite good sounding. Of course, comments are, when is he going to be extinguished and things like that. But the article was from EcoWatch, and it was newly elected president of Mexico to ban fracking. It was an interesting article because there was a couple of sides to this. So I'm going to give you a little bit of that. The president-elect, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, said he will end the use of hydraulic fracturing or fracking once he enters the office December 1st. Quote, "We will no longer use that method to extract petroleum," the populist politician said Tuesday at a press conference, as quoted by the Associated Press. This is a setback for the energy industry that has eyed Mexico's shale-rich Burgos Basin in the north. And that's what DSMOG blog had reported. We also use them. They're a really good reference. It was only less than a year ago when Mexico's National Energy Ministry opened the onshore portion of the Burgos Basin for natural gas exploration and development by private companies. So again, private companies don't give a shit about the people that live there, want to drill their gas, go through and frack and send it out of the country, because that's what happens. So the horizontal drilling technique is used to unlock the oil. We all know about that, to get that out of shale, to get it out of the shale beds, which I live on, shale. And it pollutes the air and groundwater, among other environmental and public health concerns. So the technique is banned in many U.S. municipalities and countries around the world. The plan to ban fracking in Mexico represents the latest common sense decision by a world leader to prohibit this inherently toxic, polluting practice, Food and Water Watch Executive Director Winoa Hoder told DSMOG. President-elect Obrador is moving in the right direction on many issues, including energy and the environment, Hoder said. He can move even farther by pledging to transition Mexico to a fully clean, renewable energy future, thereby setting a remarkable example for its neighbors to the north. I'll wait till the end to give you my thoughts on that. According to AP, Lopez Obrador also spoke against private electricity generation contracts that have displaced the state-owned Federal Electricity Commission, or CFE. The neoliberal governments deliberately closed the CFE plants in order to buy electricity from foreign companies at very high prices, Lopez Obrador said. All of that will be corrected. Let me ask you guys, how would you feel if that was the United States? Oh my God. It would be a dream. Thomas Tunstall, so listen, this is the one, the piece. Research director for the University of Texas, which we all know what Texas is, oil, gas, at San Antonio's Institute of Economic Development, pointed out to DSmart Blog that Mexico's potential fracking ban is mostly symbolic. Quote, near term, a ban on hydraulic fracturing in Mexico would have no impact economically or environmentally. Unlike the United States, Mexico has substantial untapped conventional oil and gas reserves, shallow water, deep water, and even onshore conventional, Tunstall said. In addition, most of the unconventional shale opportunities lie in northern Mexico, which lacks significant infrastructure, housing, roads, rail, skilled workforce. Best estimates are that any unconventional oil and gas production activity in Mexico is at least 5 to 10 years away, no matter what the government policy is. So this guy from the University of Texas, not even somebody in Mexico, is talking about the fact that this is not going to happen yet. Okay, so he's from Texas. I would like to know more about this guy. I'm going to look him up. Thomas Tunstall. He's the research director of the San Antonio's Institute of Economic Development. I want to know, what does he think in 5 to 10 years? Who is going to be fracking Mexico when we're going to be worried about what we're going to grow to eat? Ha! It's such a it's craziness. It is craziness. You're thinking they're planning this. So who's planning this 5 to 10 years from now? This guy just got into office, and this guy from the University of Texas is talking shit, in my opinion. So I'm sorry. I can't help myself. I worked in academia for a long time, and I don't like to be like this about academicians. I don't like to feel like maybe somebody's on the take, or somebody has a grant by the fossil fuel industry so that they might be talking about this. But again, I could be talking out my, because I didn't research him. And there is a link to the guy, but I really didn't research him enough to definitively, oh, I see. His expertise is the Eagle Ford Shale economics and public policy, NAFTA and small business development. So already we know he probably does have money from the fossil fuel industry. We'll look more about this guy, probably. So we go to Mexico, which, what did Trump call Mexico? Was Mexico included in a shithole country? Was that one of Donald Trump's shithole countries? We certainly are trying to build a wall to keep them out. And I suppose that Donald Trump hasn't talked about fracking Mexico yet because he's too busy doing that with Putin. What are they going to get? What are they going to do and drill? And that's not a diversion. That's really happening. That's going to happen. The United States is far too powerful a country to let this president of Mexico not frack. Let's hope not. Let's hope that Mexico stands strong. We've really assaulted them. We've really, really assaulted them. Wow, look at this. We have Sam Mitchell joining us from Collapse Chronicles, the premier interviewer. Thank you for coming. And let's see, Gigi had commented when I was reading that. You got to be kidding me. I don't know if she was meaning what she was meaning, because you guys are having a conversation. Kim is saying red tide has always happened, but not to this extent in Florida. Oh, there's all kinds of reasons for this. But I said sugar industry and the pesticide industry and all of the dumping. I mean, the ocean is the world's garbage pail. And anybody that follows our friend Martin Hutchison, the 21st century environmental explorer who rides his elliptical bicycle with his dog Starsky, calls himself Starsky and Hutch, chronicles every day, sometimes twice a day, the garbage all over. He's been in Spain and France. He's in he was in Portugal. I think he's in Holland now. And he showed, I mean, it's garbage all over, everywhere. Plastic. And that's what he was showing. He does beach cleanups. A lot of you are familiar with him because he posts on our group. And we have a group page. And I'm going to show you the group page. Particularly, there was an article on there, but this is what our group page looks like. And it's a good page if you want to go there. Of course, like I said, I'm trying out something new called Just Inform pretty soon. And yeah, Sam, we know who you are, Sam. I'm not going to go there. But I was entertaining the illustrious Mr. Mitchell at this week, and he entertained us at a house down on the water, which was lovely this week. I actually got out, it'll be Tuesday. It'll be 2 months, 8 weeks since I had my surgery. So I am getting better. And, because there's a lot to do. When we just started in here, I just brought up this whole thing about the fracking issue that could happen here and the political situation in our state between a Republican who's dying to frack my area where I live and the Cuomo and his machine and a progressive candidate named Cynthia Nixon. And I don't want to see something go to hell here, because it's so politics, business as usual driven that we, where I live, get screwed. And, I watched this week Paul Beckwith and I watched Margot. These are people that do videos on the weather. Paul did, and I put them on the page, videos on basically wet bulb. What does the heat do to the human body? And he explained it very well. So all this is on our page. You can find that on Environmental Coffee House. We put it all there for you so you don't have to go hunting. And it's not just Yahoo News or Google News pulling up something and, the same crap that's going all over. And I mean, yeah, I'd say probably we have some of the same crap that goes all over. But there's more to our page. And actually, this week, there was some interesting stuff that Jonathan was talking about. And he was talking about in the articles he put up on our page about dying and about burial and about green burial, green funerals, what you need to know. I mean, things people never think about. A green funeral. He had something on water cremation, which is alkaline hydrolysis. Why recommended? It is the most environmentally friendly method of death care, says Sieber, the vice president of research at BioResponse Solutions. So if we're lucky enough to be able to die with dignity, perhaps there are these new ways that we could leave no footprint by being buried in cemeteries. And that makes me think, this week that I visited a cemetery, and it really does take up an enormous amount of room. The headstones and the earth, that the property that's involved. And what happens to those places when sea level rise happens? Oh, I don't even want to think about it. So Jonathan's been putting up some really, really interesting articles. This one was from Mother Jones, a green alternative to cremation, dissolving your corpse in water and lye. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. And the other one was in the New York Times. It was thinking about having a green funeral. Here's what to know. And it was kind of interesting stuff. And then he went on about green stuff, green burials. And I find that Jonathan's choices juxtaposition with mine, and his writing is very good. So please, guys, come to the page. Okay, so let's move on to this week, to a little bit more to this week. I had also put up in the page about I wanted to get this to you. I'll find it. Well, I didn't put it up. It was Jonathan. Oh, and it was a very busy, it was a pretty busy one. It was, and it totally has nothing to do with much, that I'm talking about, but it was from Pew Research, and it was about U.S. religious groups and their political leanings. And it was really interesting. He says, this might be of some interest for those who are curious about different religious groups and their political orientations. And he had found this from 2016, but there was a lot of demographics, and there were 11 comments that people were talking about, the trends in our country. People are religious, and how they vote is probably pretty, interesting. So he had put that up. But I guess overall, this week's hallmarks have been the fires. But then there was an article from the New York Times, and I know that this was on, I'm sorry, I'm pixelating, but this was from our group page. Someone shared this on the group page, and it was, I believe we also shared something about it, Losing Earth, the decade we almost stopped climate change. Really, you think about how the fossil fuel industry hid it. Exxon, they hid it, and they hid the fact that it was greenhouse gases were going to destroy the atmosphere. And this article, Losing Earth, on the page that someone shared in the Times, and I'm not going to sit and go anywhere with that fake news bullshit either. The New York Times, their climate reporting is really good. So the prologue, and I'll just read it really quickly. The world has warmed more than 1 degree Celsius since the Industrial Revolution. The Paris Agreement, the non-binding, unenforceable, and already unheeded treaty signed on Earth Day in 2016, hoped to restrict the warming to 2 degrees. Yeah. Odds of succeeding, according to a recent study based on current emission trends, are 1 in 20. I do have to say, before I read this, Paul Beckwith, on his video talking about the wet bulb and talking about temperatures, he showed the regions of the world that will be unlivable. And there are those regions that are starting to be unlivable now. So climate change and the effects of climate change are not something that we can think about and say, oh, that's 2100, even 2050. That's why the bill, the Off Fossil Fuel Act for Cleaner Future targets 2035. I mean, do we even have that long to get this done? And here's another thing that it's been bothering me all week. And this is a discussion that when I read in the comments, our team member, Antonio Reed, he interviewed a meteorologist from South Florida, and I thought it was a nice interview, a little bit of hopium, but what are we going to do? Sit back and just let it happen and say, I don't give a shit and I'm not going to fight for anything because it's done, it's done. Well, even if we have in the back of our minds that, oh, this is done, I don't think taking an attitude of putting your head in the ground like an ostrich or being very angry about it is the way I choose to live my life. And, on that interview, there were when we put it up on YouTube, there were a lot of people that commented on it. that were basically saying this is, it's like Miami will be gone. And of course, there are activists that are always going to fight. There are people that are going to work to mitigate these things. It doesn't matter if we say, or if anybody says in this, that thinks negatively that we're done anyway. It's already happening. Look at the temperatures in Europe, and look at what all of the evidence and all of the dots that are going to be connected. But are we still going to sit here and do nothing? Are we going to sit here as keyboard warriors and whine about everything? Or can you do what I say and just freaking do something in your local community? Even if it's anything, you're gardening, you're planting, anything you can do. Not just give in and say, well, it's a done deal. I feel a lot like that. It is an overwhelming everyday thing when you read and you see. I read Oil Price Magazine. I read the industry magazines for gas companies, how they just do glowing discussion on natural gas, how you can pass the TV. And I had it on somewhere. I saw something and I passed the TV, and what was the swimming event was brought to you by ConocoPhillips, making, gas making life so wonderful. And it's such a big lie. You do really get overwhelmed, because you do think, and it's very easy to say with all this evidence, for those of us who have the blindfolds off, it's very easy to want to go, what the hell can I do? But there's always something you can do. Well, let me go back to this a little bit. So if by some miracle we are able to limit warming to 2 degrees, we will only have to negotiate the extinction of the world's tropical reefs, sea level rise of several meters, and the abandonment of the Persian Gulf. The climate scientist James Hansen has called 2-degree warming a prescription for long-term disaster. We all know this. Long-term disaster is now the best case scenario. 3-degree warming is a prescription for short-term disaster, forests in the Arctic, and the loss of most coastal cities. Now, we're already seeing fires in the Arctic. We're already seeing ridiculously high temperature days up there. We're already seeing all this. I mean, we are in the throes of anthropogenic climate change. We are in the throes of the tipping point. But that doesn't matter on a daily basis to me, that I know that this is happening, that I'm not still going to do what I'm going to do to take care of my community and the people that I love. And I know a lot of people feel that way. I just got a little bit, I really actually did get a little bit disconcerted this week about, I got a bug up my butt about all this week. Maybe it wasn't when I was away, but it was when I came home. So Robert Watson, a former director of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has argued that 3-degree warming is the realistic minimum. Do you understand? This is the New York Times. 4 degrees, Europe in permanent drought, vast areas of China, which are already being affected, according to Paul Beckwith. India and Bangladesh claimed by desert. Oh, that's already happening. Polynesia swallowed by the sea, the Colorado River thin to a trickle, the American Southwest largely uninhabitable. The prospect of a 5-degree warming has prompted some of the world's leading climate scientists to warn of the end of human civilization. Is it a comfort or a curse, knowing that we could have avoided all this? See, then, you look at this article's looking back and saying we could have avoided all this. But you see, greed, inherent greed did not avoid all this. Greed and creature comforts. So because in the decade that ran from 79 to 89, we had an excellent opportunity to solve the climate crisis. The world's major powers came within several signatures of endorsing a binding global framework to reduce carbon emissions, far closer than we've come since. During those years, the conditions for success could not have been more favorable. The obstacles we blame for our current inaction had yet to emerge. Almost nothing stood in our way, nothing except ourselves. Nearly everything we understood about global warming was understood in 1979. By that year, the data collected since 1957 confirmed what had been known since before the turn of the 20th century. Human beings have altered the Earth's atmosphere through the indiscriminate burning of fossil fuels. The main scientific questions were settled beyond debate. And as the 1980s began, attention turned from the diagnosis of the problem to refinement of the predicted consequences. I was in my 20s in the 80s. We weren't told, not what we are told now. Compared with a string theory and genetic engineering, the greenhouse effect was a metaphor dating to the early 1900s, was ancient history, described in any introduction to biology textbook. So why didn't we act? A common boogeyman today is the fossil fuel industry. Well, they are, which in recent decades has committed to playing the role of villain with comic book bravado. An entire subfield of climate literature has chronicled the machinations of industry lobbyists, the corruption of scientists, and the propaganda campaigns that even now continue to debase the political debate. Long after the largest oil and gas companies have abandoned the dumb show of denialism. But coordinated efforts to bewilder the public did not begin in earnest until the end of 1989. During the preceding decade, some of the largest oil companies, including Exxon and Shell, made good faith efforts to understand the scope of the crisis and grapple with possible solutions. Nor can the Republican Party be blamed. Today, only 42% of Republicans know that most scientists believe global warming is occurring, and the percentage is falling. Clueless moron nation. But during the 1980s, many prominent Republicans joined Democrats in judging that the climate problem to be a rare political winner, nonpartisan, and of the highest stakes. Among those who called for urgent and immediate far-reaching climate policy were Senators John Chafee, Robert Stafford, and David Durenberger, the EPA administrator, William K. Kelly, and during his campaign for president, George H.W. Bush. So it goes on, and it goes on, and I'm going to, they say it was understood that action would have to come immediately. At the start of the 80s, scientists within the federal government predicted that conclusive evidence of warming would appear on the global temperature record by the end of the decade, at which point it would be too late. So it goes on, talks about the broad intentional consensus. They had settled on a solution, a global treaty to curb carbon emissions. What happened? They met the group of 7 meeting in Tokyo. The leader of the world's 7 wealthiest nations signed an agreement, a statement resolving to reduce carbon emissions. 10 years later, the first major diplomatic meeting to approve the framework for a binding treaty was called in the Netherlands. Well, we know what's happened without me even reading it. A big bunch of nothing. There could be no understanding of our current and future predicament, and now the New York Times is calling it a predicament. Look it up. Without understanding why we failed to. This is a whole big article. But we did have an opportunity. And basically what came out of it was what? Greed and craziness. And then came the era of television, reality presidencies like Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky thing, which pales in comparison to what we have in office now. But if you look at the history and you see what happened, we really have been robbed. Those of us that have had a voice. Oh, Taviro, I love you too. Those of us had a voice, but a lot of us, we were so busy. I'm of that decade. I am of that age group that could have done something. But if you didn't know, and if you were living to get by and you were going to school and you were paying your student loans and you were trying to work. I worked in research. I knew some things. I knew about toxicology, chemistry. I knew, but I didn't know. I thought, oh, geez, natural gas is cleaner. I better have that in my place. After we had a house that we burned wood And then I had a house with a furnace after 5 years of burning wood, which at that time wasn't clean like the furnace, the wood stove I have now, which has a catalytic converter. But who knew? So here we are. We still have to fight. We still have to do what we have to do. And you know what? I'm going to give you one. This is Ellen Finazzi. She said, my thought is that if you believe in the Creator, then to sit on your butt is not an option. To succeed, one must each of us make a choice. And those that do nothing, have a good chance of survival. Well, there's another thing that I came up this week, and when people were talking about, there was comment on one of these strings I was reading, and they were talking about how I want to, the man said, I want to make sure that everything is good for 7 generations. And he was talking about the Iroquois, I think, it's not folklore, it's real. It's that Native American culture would always think of what I do today. How is it going to affect 7 generations from now? And we don't have 7 generations, regardless of what you believe. I know you meant not, she said she meant not to writing. I knew you meant that. But no matter what it is that you believe or you don't believe, a creator, you believe in God, you believe in Allah, you believe in any of it, that's not going to do anything, because through you and through activity and through fighting and working for a better environment for the time we have, and voting and doing all the things we've always done to make it better, even with what we know, it's the only way I could live with myself. And that person who had said that was chastised on that comment thread because they actually dared to say, maybe I want to make something better for the 7th generation. And I thought that was sad, but that's also a sign of the times. You know, when civilization is collapsing, when you look at historical data, you look at information, and you look at the way people treat each other. People treat each other horribly, but there's always those that don't. And there's always those of us that migrate together that are wanting to be doing something, that do care, regardless if we were awakened 20 years ago, 2 years ago, or just now. We're all awake. If you follow this channel, you're awake. The blindfolds are off. Erin says, really, how much worse does it have to get? It looks like the end now. Could linger on, Erin. You know, it's lingering on because it'll take time. We're seeing it though. We are bearing witness. We are bearing witness. For me, that means that me and all of us are seeing. And Angie said, vote. Register others to vote, canvass for environment protectors, drive people to polling stations. We have to do all these things. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. In our country, the United States, or in your country, Mexico just elected a wonderful president. France has an environmentally minded president. We have to now set an example. We have to get rid of the scourge that we have. That vote that I started with, which is the anti-environment vote, with all the other stuff in the kitchen sink thrown in, is where I'm going to end. That is where we're at. We are at the point where we have a Congress that is going to vote for self-interest. They think that they're giving, that they're saying, oh, but it's great for jobs. But who's going to be able to go to work when they have no water to drink? Who's going to go to work when crops are failing and there's not going to be anything on the supermarket shelves? I have to believe every day that there is some kind of difference that can be made. And we all can do that, no matter what's over on the other side of the mountain. So thank you for coming, everybody. Have a great weekend and share if you can. Peace.